educative sessions on pacemakers and ICDs, the troubleshooting. Now we are moving on to CRT and the programming aspect, the ECG, the algorithms, and there will be interesting talk on CRT today. So we have two moderators for this session, Dr. P.K. Hajra and Dr. Soumya Patro. Both are there. So now I turn it over to them to carry us through the entire session. Dr. Hajra and Dr. Soumya Patro.
Soumya, take it over.
What is that?
Soumya, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Please introduce the speaker and carry on.
I think Soumya,
Soumya, unmute yourself.
First you introduce Soumya, I think he's taking time.
Yes, sir. You just introduce.
Yes, great.
Okay, so friends, it's nice to see everybody on the screen. Let us move on to the topic. I mean, without wasting time, it's only 2 minutes left. Dr. Jadhav, please.
Yeah. Are you able to see my slides?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So can I? Okay. Just let me give some adjustment. Okay. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to discuss about the ECG and echo optimization of CRT device. And first of all, I want to thank Dr. Dilip and all the moderators of the session. I will be very basic, but if required, we can go deep. And wherever you think time is okay, I will finish there. Okay, so let's discuss first pre-CRT implantation. Response will depend upon the pre-CRT implantation selection. So if desynchrony evaluation is important in CRT responder, if there is no desynchrony, only ECG changes may not get benefit. But the trial has clearly shown that ECG is the marker for selection of the CRT, because prospect trial has shown no benefit by echo based only. And so left bundle branch block in ECG, that is called electrical desynchrony, is the most common cause for selection of the CRT or CRT-D patient, because it leads to intraventricular desynchrony, interventricular and atrioventricular desynchrony, particularly if PR interval is prolonged, which ultimately leads to incomplete LV emptying and incomplete LV filling. If you see, so in proper selection, intraventricular desynchrony, septal to posterior wall delay, that is the motion delay, in more than 130 milliseconds, this patient responds quite well. And this can be intraventricular delay is you can measure by the strain LV strain pattern, and if the difference between the two places, either septal or lateral or anterior or inferior or anterior or posterior or septal or posterior, the difference is more than 65 milliseconds in strain rate peak velocity, then definitely they are going to benefit with the CRT. So selection is also important apart from the lead positioning and other things. And intraventricular desynchrony, if you see the septal to posterior delay in strain pattern is more than 130 milliseconds, they are going to get a benefit by the CRT implantation. So another is the interventricular desynchrony, and that is measured very easily by the QRS onset to the pulmonary to the onset of the pulmonary blood flow, and compared with the QRS onset to the aortic flow. So as you know, aortic flow will be delayed if there is a LBBB, and so if the delay is more than 40 milliseconds, that means interventricular desynchrony is there. So causes of non-response response after CRT is most common cause is lack of biventricular pacing. If you want effect, it should be effective biventricular pacing more than 98% of the time. Only then it is going to get the benefit. Or LV pacing in patient with intrinsic conduction of the RV with adaptive pacing or sync CRT pacing, then you will have the benefit. But false biventricular pacing may not give benefit. It should be proper effective biventricular pacing. Only the biventricular pacing parameter 98% or more or 99%, but they are not effective. Means both synchronous conduction doesn't occur, then it is not going to get benefit. So it should be effective biventricular pacing. Lack of optimal atrioventricular pacing is the most common cause. Arrhythmias like AF, frequent VPCs also leads to non-response to the patient. Then chronotropic incompetence. If you have not programmed DDDR mode in patients having chronotropic incompetence, then the CRT is not going to get benefited. And this dyspnea of other causes may be other cause of progression of the disease. Sometimes this DCM patient, particularly after CRT, reverted to normal, absolutely normal. And once you off the CRT, again patient develop LV systolic dysfunction. Sometimes poor LV lead position is also responsible for the non-response, but you have to adjust the several things in between. So cause of non-response in early part is the early stage, means after implantation, immediately after implantation, is poor LV lead position, suboptimal device programming, and later on the disease progression or lead displacement or other problem. And selection of the pacing mode should be always either DDDR or DDDI, depending on whether the patient is AF or not. Upper rate should be higher, because if the patient develops pulmonary edema, sinus tachycardia occurs and tracking rate is not 130 to 40, then it may not track, and so that higher rate during the pulmonary edema, when the biventricular pacing is most required, then and it's not able to track, there is a block, then the patient will deteriorate further. So upper tracking rate should be 130 to 140 beats per minute. So that is the important thing. Apart from that, AV interval, the main optimization in AV interval is the negative AV hysteresis, by which way you use negative AV hysteresis is the key. And those patients who are on CRT D and having history of tachycardia, ATP prevents the deterioration of the myocardia. And if you see the basic pacing rate in CRT patient should be higher than the better. If you see the cardiac output at 70 beats, it's higher as compared to 60 beats per minute. Although stroke volume doesn't change it over the 60 or 70. And so you need to optimize both AV and VV interval. AV interval optimization, as I told you, the aim that left atrial contraction finishes and LV contraction starts. That is the aim. And VV optimization is that the both septal and lateral wall, or the posterior wall contract simultaneously, so that the stroke volume is maximum. And echo optimization for AV optimization, for echo is several methods: Ritter method, simplified inflow method, iterative method, maximal filling time, which is more important, mitral valve VTI, aortic valve VTI. VV optimization, usually we see aortic valve VTI and TBI. Other things are there, and nowadays most of them are algorithm based, in like Medtronic device as adaptive algorithm, and Senju device have that is called Sync AV CRT, Sync AV CRT, where delta is used to change it. Now ECG, how will you know where is my lead after seeing the ECG? If the positive QRS lead V1 during LV pacing occurs, that means lead is in the free wall of LV. So if lead is there, then it will be either pure R, big R, as small as, or RS complex. Now, whether you have to know whether it is superior axis or if the axis is superior, means lead is inferior lead position. If the axis is inferior, that means anterior lead position or more basal lead position. Lead AVF differentiate between the LV lead position in the circumferential directions. So lead AVF is expected to differentiate between more inferolateral. If it is more inferolateral, it will be negative. AVF will be negative. If it is more anterolateral, means superior, then it will be AVF will be positive. Isoelectric QRS pattern in AVF is suggestive of two. Sir, बोलिए. हाँ CRT. Okay. So if you see isoelectric QRS pattern in AVF is suggestive true lateral LV lead position. Then basal, mid versus apical. How will you differentiate? If positive precordial QRS concordance during LV pacing is there, the lead is basal position. This part of the lead is there, or you are pacing from basal part. If you are quadripolar, you can pace from here. If the QRS transition pattern V4 to V6, that means it's a mid-level LV lead position. If QRS transition occurs earlier than V4, that means it's an apical LV lead position. And if a QR, small q and big R or large Q R complex occurs in lead 1 and AVL, that suggests 90% of cases that the biventricular pacing is occurring. If you see the blue one, that is the lateral wall. If the free wall of the LV gets stimulated first, then the V1 is positive. If septum gets stimulated first by the either intrinsic conduction by the right bundle branch or by pacing, then the V1 will be negative. LV lead position in circumferential direction using AVF, if you see, if the infralateral is activated first, AVF will be negative. If the anterolateral is activated first, AVF will be the positive. So what we need is positive one. And if you see whether you are stimulating basal, mid or apex, it will depend. V1 to V6 all positive means you are stimulating at the basal part where the benefit is more, or mid part, because basal part, lateral basal part of the LV is activated late in LVBB, and so the later part you activate, more the benefit, more the synchronous contraction of the LV, and better the stroke volume. And if you are stimulating the mid part of the LV, that means V1, V4 will be positive, but V6 will be negative. If V4 is negative, V1 is positive, that means you are pacing more apical where the benefit is least. Best benefit is in the mid part and basal part. Okay, so same thing you can get by the individual ECG. I'm not going to go detail here. And now how you will optimize by ECG? AV optimization by ECG. If the QRS is more than 150 millisecond, then measure the PR interval, conducting PR interval, and 0.7 into PR interval, whatever it comes, then minus 55 millisecond. That is the AV, optimized AV by the ECG. If the QRS duration is less than 150 milliseconds, then you do not need to minus the minus 55, but 0.7 into PR interval, that is 70% of the PR interval, is enough to fuse the QRS from the RV and LV. So this is the ECG way of fusing the QRS, so the better fusion occurs and so the better contraction occurs. So AV delay optimization using the biventricular paced ECG, role of optimizing the AV delay and VV interval is to create the best possible electrical resynchronization. Best AV delay and VV interval programming requires knowing the onset of the intrinsic ventricular contraction and to ensure both 100% capture of the LV. Here LV capture is most important because you need 100% LV capture. So adequate threshold is also important, and AV delay in such a way so that intrinsic conduction of the right bundle branch occurs, or if QRS interval, if PR interval is more than 200, then you can pace the RV in such a way, or LV pre-excite much earlier, so that because LV, if you will pre-excite earlier from the epicardium, contraction is much more slower as compared to endocardium, and so you have to pre-excite to get the better fusion of the ECG QRS. So as you see, if AV delays by ECG, changing ECG 50 millisecond, the QRS is not that great. And if you see 140 millisecond or more, pure LVB without pacing, it's quite wide. But between 90 to 100 milliseconds, please call after 15 minutes. So if between 90 and 100 milliseconds, where the fusion is better, the QRS is narrower, where the AV interval which is selected is the best. So if you see VV interval optimization using biventricular paced ECG, pre-excitation, the LV can allow fusion of the activation wave derived from one of the right bundle branch with that of the LV pacing lead, which may provide more pronounced hemodynamic improvement than simultaneous BiV pacing. As a consequence, programming of the VV interval should be used to create a QRS complex with adequate contribution from LV pacing containing a dominant R or big R, or R, V1, V2, either big R or big R and a small s, or big R, big S. So that is the important of pre-exciting the LV. And so if you see the different LV pre-excitation, it has shown the minus 20 milliseconds is the narrowest QRS, and that you have to look for by changing the different VV interval changes. So these are the guideline of the ECG manipulation and narrowing. So what other things to be important in consideration of the CRT follow-up, that rate responsive pacing should be activated in patients with chronotropic incompetence. As I showed you, in that cardiac output increases when the rate is higher, and tracking rate should be high, particularly in those patients who goes into pulmonary edema, and automatic mode switch must be programmed on, because many of these patients develop atrial fibrillation, so that it can switch over and it can give better. And then the other parameters for V-sense response and other parameters are there to pace in atrial fibrillation is important. Sufficient safety margin output programming to ensure LV pacing is not double that of the incomplete heart block patient or dependent RV pacing patient. Like you keep twice. Here you don't need to twice, but make sure that auto capture is on, so that all LV pacing should capture the LV. So I always keep the auto capture on this if it is available. And refractive period should be adjusted to prevent PMT in case of frequent PVCs. And if frequent PVC is there in the halter, then definitely biventricular pacing is not going to go 100% or 98% or above, and so the benefit is not going to get. So you need to ablate it, or you start V-sense response if it is available, so that each even ectopics will give you the V-sense response, biventricular ectopic. The ectopic will be fused. But the best way is to do the RF ablation of the ventricular ectopic to get the maximum 98% or more biventricular pacing. So AV delay optimization is the most important in patients with your biventricular pacemaker. And goal of AV optimization is that optimal AV delay should be such so that E and A become separate. Should not be truncated, and if you will have too long AV delay, that is PR is long, then there will be diastolic MR is occurring, and then that is not going to get the benefit. EA get fused, so that's not the important thing. And if you make the AV interval too short, then the truncated mitral valve closure occurs without filling the left ventricle by atrial contraction, and the truncated A waves not occur. That is our idea. And if you see in Ishikawa method, the diastolic MR, first you increase the long AV delay, and then find out the diastolic MR interval and minus that diastolic interval, that is the true optimal AV delay. Then you can VTI again. I told you I will show many things here. As you see that AV optimization versus standard 120 millisecond AV interval, the AV optimization in that patient, the New York Heart Association class improvement is better, quality of life is better, ejection fraction improvement is better, although endastolic, left ventricular endastolic changes, and its changes are also quite, if you compare with the baseline, is significant decrease, but with the 120 millisecond, it's not significant, but it's still more pacing which is given. So if you have not optimized, and if you see, the ejection fraction improvement is also more. New York Heart Association grade is also lower. That means the patient is responding better. And now the different method, the echo method, as I told you, I will go one by one. One is the mitral valve Doppler echo method, where you shorten the AV delay in steps of 20 milliseconds until truncation of the A wave is seen, and the AV delay, then that is the AV delay is too short. Once truncation is seen, then now increase the AV delay by 10 milliseconds till the truncation is cut off. Means there is no truncation. That is the optimal AV delay. That's the important needed. Like if you do the too short AV delay, there will be truncation of both the sides. Same thing here. Here AV interval 60 milliseconds, too short, truncation of the this occurs. If it is 80 milliseconds, although truncation occurs not much, 100 milliseconds, there is no truncation, better filling. And not only that, from here to here, filling interval will also increase. from onset of the E wave to the end of the proper E wave, A wave, the duration, filling duration is more. So the AB interval where the filling duration is more without truncation of the A, without any, that is the best AV time by echo. So this is the optimal echo where EA separates and without any truncation or without any diastolic MR. That is we needed. So here AV interval, that is also optimal, but once it goes 120 millisecond above, EA fuses. So long AV delay, EA fuses, and there is a diastolic MR. So this is the same in AVR also. There is a diastolic MR started appearing. So in AV interval optimization by Ritter method, although this is found to be not that effective, if you will tell me, I will tell definitely. So AV intervals are programmed to a short and to a long value, say 50 or 250 milliseconds, and then time from Q to A interval was measured in the echo, and AV optimal interval is determined by AV long interval, say 150 milliseconds, minus QA short and QA long. QA short will be more longer and QA long will be shorter. So you measure the AV delay in Q from surface ECG Q to A that at 60 milliseconds and 160 milliseconds Q to A, which is quite short, and then long is 160 milliseconds minus this 100 milliseconds is the this one in AV 60 it is 100. This interval is 100. You minus this interval 20 milliseconds, so it becomes 80 milliseconds, and in long AV interval minus 80, so 80 milliseconds will be the optimal AV delay. Is the Ritter method. Very easy, but it is found to be not that accurate in determining the here like you measured Ritter method 50 milliseconds is the here is the when you did the 50 milliseconds AV interval, it is 154 milliseconds. When you did the 150 your milliseconds, the interval is 128. So you minus it, 154 minus 128, and maximum is 150. So 150 minus 154 minus 128, that is 124 is the ideal Ritter's method. Then another is the AV interval optimization by mitral inflow method, where a long AV interval is programmed and the delay between the end of the A wave and the onset of the mitral regurgitation is measured, and this value is then subtracted from the long AV interval, yielding the optimal AV interval. So where the diastolic MR is increased, that you minus it, and that is the AV interval. That is the most optimal AV interval. So mitral inflow velocity is like here 200 minus 70 is the 130. The diastolic MR occurs is the 70 milliseconds. So that you minus in 200. So 130 milliseconds should be the right AV interval. So what you need is EA separate, terminate without truncation of the A wave, and diastolic filling period is maximum without truncation. That is our aim of AV optimization. And now one more thing, that if atrial sensing occurs, the AV interval is say maximum is 120 to 160 milliseconds. But if you pace the atria, then the atrial conduction occurs slowly. So left atrial depolarization occurs late, and so left atrial contraction occurs late. Here your paced AV interval, paced AV interval should also be longer as compared to paced AV interval. So in that case, AV interval should be longer. And these are the trials which, although some trials like Freedom trial, Smart AV trial, Adaptive CRT trial, although Adaptive CRT trial has shown benefit, definitely Clear trial, some trial has shown no benefit, but clearly those who do not respond with the standard technique, it responds with the AV and VV optimization. So should we use rate adaptive AV delay in cardiac resynchronization therapy? In this study has clearly shown rate adaptive AV delay should be on, but those device like St. Jude has Sync AV CRT and the adaptive AV, there every minute it is adjusted. This will work accordingly, and you don't need to program. Just you have to make program Sync AV on with a delta or adaptive pacing on, either LV or both LV and BiV. Now, something about the VV optimization. As you know, optimal cardiac output you need, so you can measure by invasive dP by dt or by echo-based dP by dt and find out where is the dP by dt is maximum. But some most easy way is LVOT VTI or TVI, whatever you call, and or M mode based septal and lateral wall, posterior wall simultaneous contraction. That is the VV optimization. So as you know, cardiac output is stroke volume into heart rate, and stroke volume depends upon the LVOT area into velocity time integral. LVOT is fixed, and so you have to need only VTI to measure the stroke volume, and this is the stroke volume in the So you measure the VV in such a way so that maximum stroke volume occurs. So maximum stroke volume occurs between, if you activate the LV pre. So if you activate the LV pre, say 10 millisecond, 20 millisecond, 30 millisecond, and where the maximum stroke volume occurs, that is VTI of the LVOT occurs, that should be selected VV interval for that patient. Why do we need VV interval optimization? These two studies has shown clearly that VV optimization increases the ejection fraction more as compared to optimal AV or simultaneous AV interval. So clearly you need to have, but other trial has some shown benefit, some shown no benefit, but it should be adjusted to have maximum benefit. So definitely VV optimization is needed in this group of patients. Now, how to do that? If you see, this is the, when you pre-excite RV by 10 milliseconds, this is the your 10 VTI is 10.42. If you RV LV simultaneous, VTI is 10.86. If you do LV pre-excite by 10 millisecond, VTI 13.15. If you pre-excite LV by 20 millisecond, VTI is 15.05. If you LV pre-excite by 30 millisecond, it decreases. That means optimal is minus 20 millisecond. So in that way, you can detect, and this is the gold standard that it works. But the problem is that, like here in this patient, different LV pre-excitation or RV pre-excitation, the VTI is small, but highest VTI where LV is pre-excited by 40 milliseconds, and here it is 22.67. That means this should be that LV should be pre-excited by 40 milliseconds. So this is the gold standard for VV optimization, and you can VV optimize also by the septal and this difference in timing from the QRS onset to contraction time of the septal and from that of this posterior wall, and you see the lowest the difference between the two timing, the better the result. Like desynchronous more than 130, if it is less than 50, these patients are going to get the benefit. That is better VV optimization, and they have better stroke volume. So definitely, despite conflicting results, and like Freedom trial has shown no benefit, but that's not true. A rather limited or moderate improvement in LV function or stroke volume of VV optimization may prove beneficial in some patients with suboptimal response to CRT in whom no cause is found. So basically, it should be optimized, and this is the way when to optimize. Pre-discharge, you have to optimize, see the result in 3 months, and if result is not there, further re-optimization is done, and CAV and VV proper optimization. If it's response, keep on that. And what is the aim? Aim of program AV delay is such that, say, if you full LV capture, say LV depolarized here, majority of the LV is depolarized, then desynchronous conduction occurs, desynchronous contraction occurs. But what you need, fusion from both the RV, either intrinsic conduction or pace speed and LV pace speed, so that fusion occurs, and in that fusion the QRS is narrow. And where the and anything if you will pre-excite RV more or RV pure, then or pure LV will be where the right bundle depolarizes the whole, the desynchronous conduction will occur, and here we need this type of fusion, both equally from RV as well as the right ventricular lead or right bundle conduction, or by the intrinsic conduction, or by the left ventricle pacing. And these are the summary of the trials of left ventricular and biventricular pacing, and it showed that left ventricular pacing is also equally effective even if it is synchronized properly with the right ventricle intrinsic conduction of the right bundle. So there are AB optimization, smart delay by Boston, and they use this smart delay algorithm. This algorithm, although I have not used, so I have not much experience about it. I have experience about the Sync AB CRT. It's a new algorithm for optimal CRT. This slides and total was shared from the St. Jude Medical, and what it showed, this is available in these models, and it's a new algorithm. Basically, it's a rhythm where it's an algorithm which it measures the intrinsic conduction and intrinsic AB conduction, P2 QRS, and negative hysteresis uses, and it's the same negative hysteresis bit to bit. Mostly here after 252 bits, it's continuous 256 cycle length. Is before that it uses 3 bits intrinsic where it doesn't paces, it see the intrinsic conduction, and if the intrinsic conduction whatever it is, whatever you did the fix the delta, say -50, then after 3 bits, say 180 milliseconds, then minus delta is say 50 milliseconds, so minus delta will be 50 milliseconds, so it will become intrinsic conduction 180, so minus delta is 50, so 180 minus 50, so 130 millisecond will be the paced interval, and it will continue to pace with that interval 250 cycles, and then again check. So intermittent checking of 3 bits is required for the so that the biventricular pacing occurs here. Here also intrinsic conduction will go through the right bundle, and right bundle is activated, and here also the QRS become narrow, and the synchronous and fused contraction of the that is synchronous and fused depolarization of the LV will occur. So this is the Sync AB CRT mode. How to perform is the perform Sync AB CRT mode. Locate it, start measurement, and then you have to look in the ECG and see where the QRS is narrowest, and that minus delta delta you have to fix. Like this, say minus 50 has been fixed, and whatever you sensitive interval fixed from before and doesn't matter. It will check and divide and minus that delta. Say minus 30, you can do minus 30. Say if intrinsic conduction 180, and you have set the delta of minus 30, then 150 will be the paced interval of the LV. And what will happen? You measure the QRS. If it is narrowest, then you keep on that. So you have to look it. And so like this, if it is with a short AV delay, biventricular pacing completely replaces native activation. So no RBB conduction fusion here. And if you see the Sync AV CRT, here 3 beats, conduction beats, measure the AV interval, intrinsic AV interval, and then it Sync AV, after that Sync AV starts, and Sync AV will do the minus delta decrease, minus it, the delta, that is either 50, 60, whatever you keep, and that causes the simultaneous contraction of the both RV and the LV. So this is the data perform Sync AV CRT, and you put the delta and measure the ECG, QRS, and where it is, you program that. Then this is the programming, and it has found to be quite beneficial. I'm not going to go detail here. It's very easy system, easy to adjust. So every 256 bits, it's the same measured. And now average of this, and average of this, whatever sync you have fixed, it will be minus. So AV delay, whatever sync AV delta you have fixed, say minus 50 millisecond, it will be minus 134 millisecond is the optimal AV interval. It will automatically, if you will fix it, it will automatically adjust and patient. So this diagram already previously I told you gives the maximum benefit where simultaneous fusion occurs, and it has been found that if you will do the either LV only, but the BIV Sync AV has maximum decrease in QRS duration. This is another abstract where it has shown the QRS duration is significantly decreased, and there is a.
Dr. Jadhav, please conclude. Huh?
about to, but another adaptive CRT and that finishes. So this is the conclusion. Now, as I told you, suboptimal AV delay is the most important cause for non-response of the and decrease in BIV pacing below 90% is the most important cause for the CRT response. And so another company, that is Medtronic, has started adaptive CRT pacing, and what it said, the adaptive LV pacing, where LV pacing occurs if that is the PR interval is below 200 milliseconds, that is normal PR interval. So adaptive LV pacing reduces the RV pacing while maintaining CRT by pacing the LV only prior to intrinsic RV activation. Adaptive CRT promotes physiologic pacing by reducing RV pacing by 44%. In addition to the potential for an increase in CRT response, reducing RV pacing increases device longevity, as I here shown. And timing of LV pace is automatically adjusted based on atrial to intrinsic QRS interval measurement, that is AV interval measurement, and 70% of the intrinsic AV interval is the timing which is made for the but at means whatever the intrinsic AV interval minus 70% of that interval, the LV will start pacing, and that will narrow the QRS much more. And intrinsic RV contraction completes the biventricular activation here. When does adaptive LV pacing occurs? If the heart rate is below 100, above 100, then it's not that effective. Then it will, you make LV pacing and BIV adaptive pacing both on, then it will work. So if the atrial sensitive ventricular sensing PR, that is PR interval, is less than 200 milliseconds, it will work. If the atrial passive ventricular sensing less than 250 milliseconds, then it will also it will work. And LV capture must be capture management, that is auto capture should be on. And adaptive BIV occurs when you have and then VV delay, it adjusts by seeing the far field QRS. If the far field QRS is more, VV LV will pre-excite further and will make, and they will measure the your far field QRS, and if it is wide, it will pre-excite the LV in such a way so that QRS becomes fused and it becomes narrow. So adaptive BIV, where both when the QRS is more than 200 milliseconds, both RV pace will occur and LV pace will occur, but the LV will pre-excite. It will depend upon the your QRS duration in far field ECG. So it's a very good program. I feel this is the best program to make the biventricular pacing short. Anything more? I think rest is the only example which has been shown here. That another thing, if you every minute it doesn't try to see the AV interval, but those AV interval where the AV conduction occur, that if every minute it goes, so in 24 hours many minutes will not be paced. So what it does, there is a V-sense response, very important. V-sense response is those beats where it is checking the intrinsic conduction, the beat which is conducted, they give biventricular pacemaker. That is, they sense the V and give the ventricular pace response, so that both RV and LV, so that the whatever even intrinsic conduction every minute which he checks becomes BIV pace. So that means it does not reduce the biventricular pacing timing. It is more than 98% in most of the time. So that is another important thing. Another important thing is that here, just a minute. Already I have told about this thing. All these are examples. How to increase, how to go next.
Because we have another presentation, can we discuss these things?
Yes. I am finishing. So just I'm concluding. Just rest is all examples. Is nothing. Just I'm concluding. Rest is all examples. So I'm giving. So the conclusion is optimization of AV and VV interval after implantation is a must to get maximum benefit of CRT. Echo-based and ECG-based optimization is initial gold standard techniques of CRT response. Device-based algorithm is quite effective on a minute-to-minute basis. Fusion of LV lateral and septal wall by RV and LV stimulation leads to electrical fusion to give maximum narrowing of the QRS and hence the CRT response. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jadhav. It was, as usual, quite professorial. And if you have comment from Somo, but if I start the conversation, like you have told everything about normal sinus rhythm. What about AV block and pacing dependent CRT when we go for upgradations? Do these algos work in those complete heart block or pacing dependence or upgradation of pacemaker to CRT?
No, yes, it works there also. There is a limit in this system. They will check for 300 milliseconds. If it up to 300 milliseconds says the interval, if there is no intrinsic conduction, it will pace by you. Okay, sir.
Okay.
Did you able to make
me
understand?
Sir, if
Yes.
there is complete heart block, this
One
algorithm is not
people says,
both adaptive
Algorithm-
CRT as well as
no. Algorithm will.
they are
how
not
it
going to
will-
work. They do
Just a
complete
minute.
heart block.
How to make?
Let him, yeah.
No. Just a minute.
Dr. Jadhav, yes. Continue.
No. What I mean to say, every minute it is checking. So once they check, and they will wait for 300 milliseconds, that intrinsic conduction is not there because of the complete heart block. Then it will pace by V, and later on, all will be by V at the shortest possible interval. That is the interval which they will give maximum QRS narrowing, which will be determined by your far-field ECG.
Okay.
Once they check, say 1 minute later, they check and found 300 millisecond no intrinsic conduction, and after 300 millisecond, it will give biventricular pacemaker. Okay.
So
So in adaptive pacing,
Host
no beat will pay.
there is a housekeeping. Can host switch off the Mr. Rajendra's video? He's white naked and roaming around. And Dilip, your comment.
Because as far as my understanding was there, basically in adaptive, pacing, it will not work when there is a heart rate is more than 100 or there is a AV block. So where adaptive pacing will not work. Although we have got algorithms like negative AV search, so it will search and it will give you the AV pacing at time. So we have many other algorithms which will take care the AV synchronization in complete heart block patients, and you do those patients.
No. That's Dilip. You see, this is not true. This will work even in more than 100 beats per minute. If the heart rate is more than that, they will work in BIV mode, biventricular mode, not the LV pacing mode.
But in LV block,
Adaptive BIV will work there.
So comment,
Somo?
your comment.
Yes, sir. Actually,
I have examples of those things. I have not shown where the heart rate is going more than 100 while doing gardening or while doing exercise, how it adjusts the pacemaker, because by echo you are doing in the lab, in your in echo lab and by ECG, but every minute patient is walking, doing some other activities, sometimes resting. So in minute to minute adjustment is much better by this algorithm.
Okay, Soma.
No, you're saying something.
actually, these kind of ECG and echo optimization, actually, it was done before 2013 and all. After 2013, there is development of all the major companies. They have their own algorithm, and it is mostly required in ischemic cardiomyopathy and those who are non-responder and having QRS complex less than 150, because this is the dialysis situation where patient may not improve. And if the patient is having non-ischemic cardiomyopathy more than 150, this patient will improve. I'll ask sir that if the patient is non-QRS and 150 more than 150 milliseconds, then what kind of ECG and echo criteria will fit in this type of patient? If this patient is not having LVB and they having maybe RVB with QRS of more than 150 and all, then what echo and ECG ECG will get that ROF in B1 and the QR in the lead one, but or the narrowest. But what kind of echo criteria we can fit in this patient?
You see, for the selection in RBBV patient, the dysrhythmia by prospect trial, yeah, any of this trial, echo is not the selection for the patient. Okay, it is the ECG. And in ECG, LBBB with 150 milliseconds or more or 130 milliseconds or more is the indication for biventricular pacemaker. Apart from that, if RBBB QRS more than 150 milliseconds, it's a class 2B indication. But you can put it. But best for that, I will suggest best for that you do the left bundle pacing.
So,
Okay. Or if you want to even better, you do lot pacing, lot CRT. That is, you do left bundle pacing along with the CRT.
So if I bring Arindam here, suppose somebody's got 6 sinus syndrome and AF ablation, you've done AF ablation. Now you want to put him on CRT. What kind of algos you will adopt?
Yeah.
Basically, sinus node dysfunction, you have done AF ablation. So the patient is now supposed to be in sinus rhythm.
No,
So
no, two
sinus
situations. One is
rhythm-
6 sinus syndrome, another is AF ablation.
Okay, fine. So six sinus syndrome, many times there is overlap. Many patients 6 sinus syndrome may have paroxysmal atrial fibrillation. That's why I got confused. So 6 sinus syndrome, as Dr. Jadhav has also mentioned, many a time we do not switch on the rate responsive function of the CRT. So whenever the patient does some exercise, something like that, the heart rate goes up. The heart rate ideally should go up. So that doesn't happen. And 6 sinus syndrome, there is many a time chronotropic incompetency. So that rate responsive parameter has to be switched on. And regarding atrial fibrillation, yeah, Dr. Jadhav, you have anything to add?
Yes. You say in fibrillation, if the patient is say in paroxysmal fibrillation or intermittent fibrillation occurs, one thing is clear: automatic mode switch be on, so it will work as a DDDIR mode. But what you need, whatever conducted beat occurs, it should be bi-V. Okay, and it should be regular, and it should be in such a way so that heart rate does not increases. In adaptive CRT patient, they have this programming which is made. You have to make it on. I have all those. Before I finish, above that, how to increase the pacing rate, pacing bi-V pacing in patient with atrial fibrillation is there, where we have atrial fibrillation recovery rate, we have sensed AV response, B sensed AV response, whichever we conducted, it will be biventricular. Okay,
Right.
It will be sensed, it will give biventricular.
I think Dilip, the last comment, good position or good
Ablation
ECG.
of the AV node and let the full bi-V to act.
Okay, Dr. Jadhav. Dilip, your comment on good position or good ECG at the end of the procedure. What is most welcoming thing for a successful CRT?
Sir, the CRT candidacy is best judged by the ECG changes. If there is LBB, so unlike the echo finding which can show dysynchrony, this is the ECG finding which tells you the responder rate. So a good ECG after the procedure, and if you adjust it properly with the algorithms are available, then you are going to get the best possible result. And just a word about I think atrial fibrillation with uncontrolled rate is still the unconquered terrain in CRT management. We don't have much of evidence that it actually works. It works when we most of the patients, when we go for AV node ablation and then everything is under control, then the responder rate will be quite high.
Yeah.
Otherwise, in rest of the situation, still there is a topsy-turvy, but still adaptive pacing and effective CRT, which is another kind of CRT pacing, which is available in Western countries, not available in India. I think it also increases the pacing rate in AF atrial fibrillation.
Dilip, you see, in adaptive CRT, they have this atrial fibrillation that is what is called PVRP changing.
Yes.
So in those patients with PVRP changing, they will sense only few P wave, which is beyond the PVRP, which is because it has changed, and that will be bi-V pace because V sense response is on. So the rate will not increase, but best way is definitely the ablation of the AV node and bi-V.
Right. So thank you, Dr. Jadhav, for your excellent deliberations. And now we are waiting for another excellent speaker, my friend, Dr. Arindam. And Dr. Dilip and Soma will moderate. over to you, Arindam, because time is running out. We can straight away go to the topic.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Now, Dr. Jadhav, you need to unshare your screen so that I can
Stop sharing.
just a minute. I have answered. Okay. Let me. I have answered. I clicked answer. Can you share?
Thank you. Thank you.
Jadhav,
Thank
please
you.
stay with us. Arindam, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes, I have answered before. Okay.
Yeah, I got it. Thank
Stay
you.
with us, sir. Yeah.
So while I start my presentation, I think my screen is visible.
Yes, go ahead.
CRT device based on. So most important, if I take the last question of Dr. Hajra, the most important step in CRT is the optimal positioning of the LV lead, because that is something you cannot change after the implantation procedure is over. So that is extremely important, and it should be properly guided, and it should be guided by QLV. As we all know, longer the QLV, so higher is the chance of success, chance of response, and at the same time, the QRS duration of post-CRT patient is going to be lesser with that. Now, let me come back to my topic proper. My topic is CRT device-based optimization, but I must acknowledge, I must thank Dr. Jadhav, because probably he has almost covered my, present topic proper. So most of my topic has already been covered by Dr. Jadhav, so I'll be trying to be as brief as possible. And he actually made my job very easy, but I like refer with Dr. Jadhav, because he mentioned that the eco-guided optimization to be a gold standard, but that is not the case, because if we even go by the guidelines, none of the guidelines nowadays, they recommend eco-guided optimization. As Dr. Shomo was saying, before 2013, we used to give more importance to the eco-guided optimization, but now we know that eco-guided optimization are probably not that effective. In fact, multiple trials has been done. Dr. Jadhav already mentioned about the Freedom trial. There are other trials, very few trials. So one of the trial is CLEAR trial, which showed some improvement with eco-based optimization of the CRT. Most of the other trial, there was hardly any difference. So nowadays we have stopped practicing eco-based optimization. So what are the causes of non-response? Most important, Dr. Jadhav has also shown this slide. Suboptimal AV timing is probably the most important factor, which is responsible for non-response of CRT patients. Now, at the same time, it is the QRS duration of the post-CRT patient, which is probably the most important predictor of a successful response. Multiple studies has evaluated that, and in fact, most of the studies found it. It is the QRS duration of post-CRT which matters the most. And you can see non-responder and responder, there is clear-cut difference in terms of QRS narrowing. So anybody who got a very wonderful reduction of QRS duration, that particular gentleman is supposed to be a responder with this novel therapy, cardiac resynchronization therapy. Now, post-procedural programming, ECG, what we want to have nowadays, the concept is gradually changing. Initially, we thought biventricular pacing is the most important factor which actually corrects the electrical dyssynchrony. But now we understood that it is the fusion. It is the fusion of multiple waveform which actually will give rise to maximum improvement of LV ejection fraction and maximum improvement of the LV dyssynchrony. This is wonderful slide. We can see there are two types of dyssynchrony which are important, as we all know, AV dyssynchrony and VV dyssynchrony. Now as I already mentioned, it is the AV interval which is the most important parameter to be programmed properly for an optimal response. There can be short intrinsic AV conduction or long, and depending upon that, the waveform will also differ, and the QRS duration of the patient will also differ. Now, something called fusion optimized interval, because if you get multiple waveform, there will be good fusion from multiple waveform, and that actually will reduce the QRS to the maximum extent. And this is a new method to achieve narrowest QRS for optimization of the AV as well as VV interval in patients undergoing cardiac resynchronization therapy. And multiple trials has actually evaluated this technique, and they found it very, very useful. Now, post-pacing optimization beyond patient selection and LV lead selection, we need to select the ideal pacing configuration. I already discussed echo and electrical distinction, but it is the ECG which is your best guide. So we should be actually guided by the ECG and maintain optimal biventricular pacing through changes, either quantitative changes and consistency changes. Now, there are actually, as Dr. Shomu was mentioning, most of the companies, they have come up with different algorithms which are actually very modern algorithm. You are having very few things to do, but this algorithm, we can quote smart AV, sonar, adaptive CRT. We already discussed. There is sync AV from St. Jude, adaptive CRT from Medtronic, and effective CRT is not yet available, though it has other advantages in atrial fibrillation patient. But mostly it is the adaptive CRT which is the current algorithm, most current algorithm from Medtronic. So what they do, they actually understood the fact the AV interval, we cannot have a fixed AV interval for all the patient, because the AV interval is something which also varies, and it depends on multiple factors. So all these modern algorithm, they have changing AV interval depending upon multiple. Now, activation pattern, this is the activation pattern we can see. This is the LVV upper panel, left bundle branch block. So the lateral wall or free wall of the ventricle is actually the portion which is getting latest activation. Now in LV pacing, again it is reverse. We can see the blue portion is the LV position of the LV lead, which is actually giving stimulus. Now, if we give biventricular stimulus, then from RV side as well as LV side, there is continuous pacing, and they can actually create a very good fusion. Now, frontal axis and pacing axis, we actually, from looking at the 12-lead ECG, we can understand how much the LV component as well as the RV component is actually taking part in creating the fusion. Fine. So, for example, normal axis, we all know, if there is proper LV pacing only, as well as, or similar thing happens in RVOT pacing as well, the mean QRS axis will shift towards right side. Similarly, RV pacing, it will shift to the upper portion. This is the area where RV pacing, apical pacing, electrical axis happens. So just merely looking at the ECG, 12-lead ECG, we can understand. Now, this is a very important slide. This is a 12-lead ECG assessment and the algorithm by which we can understand how the biventricular pacing is happening. Now, if we find a very dominant R wave in V1, that suggests the proper LV activation, and that actually suggests the CRT is working very nicely. Now, if there is not this dominant R wave is absent in V1, so there is a presence of in absence of dominant R wave, there might be RS pattern or QS pattern in V1. Then multiple things can happen. Actually, we need to keep them in back of our mind. So there might be loss of LV capture. The LV lead might got misplaced. There might be pronounced LV latency. LV intermyocardial conduction disorder, which is commonly known as LV ICD, or it can be a different kind of fusion. So to understand what exactly is going on, we have multiple things we can do. So that actually make the LV mandatory pacing. By that we can have a dominant R wave in V1. So by that we'll understand that there is no dislodgement or something like that, but rather proper LV pacing is not happening. Or we can program the CRT in asynchronous mode to see the LV pacing as well. So these are different things we can do. So we can program the VV delay as well to get a proper LV pacing. Now, if by doing those things, dominant ROAV is found, then it is fine. If it is still not found, then we think loss of LV or other things. So this is a very practical algorithm how you should, approach any patients. Now, this slide already has been shown by Dr. Jadhav. Now, it is very important. Most important part of CRT optimization is determined for AV delay. Now, if we, have a very long AV delay, then what is the problem? There might be diastolic mitral regurgitation. So that is a problem. Now, at the same time, if you get a very too short AV delay, the gets truncated. So it is very, very important to find the optimal AV delay. And most of this, AV delay, as you all know, AV delay, it can be a paced AV delay or it can be a natural. Say, for example, Dr. Bhadra was mentioning, if the patient is having 6 sinus syndrome, then in that patient, the atrium is also getting paced. So generally, the paced AV delay and the intrinsic normal AV delay, they are not similar. There is some difference. Mostly, the paced AV delay is somehow, duration of paced AV delay is somehow lesser than intrinsic AV delay. And not only that, this AV delay is a dynamic thing. So it depends on the activity of the patient. It varies according to activity. Say, for example, resting or exercise. Multiple drugs are there which has important effect on this AV delay, particularly beta blocker, lanoxin, and most of the other antiarrhythmic therapy. And this AV delay can have some natural variation as well. So what you can understand, this AV delay is not a fixed entity. So most of this modern algorithm of CRT, they took note of this important finding that AV delay cannot be a fixed entity. So there is a need of dynamic optimization. So regular device optimization is important due to heart remodeling. Clinical data suggests that optimization performed at least every 3 months proves to improve the clinical outcome. Now, one of the algorithms from St. Jude is the sync AV, which utilizes the sync AV delay adjustment. So it shortens automatically with programmable delta in response to intrinsic conduction and reevaluate intrinsic conduction every 250 bits to readjust the AV delay. Now, the clinical benefit, I'll come to it later, how it is done. It is very easy actually. It is very easy. We can adjust this delta. Delta actually is the time duration, which actually, whenever it is programmed, say for example, I program the delta at 50, then the measured AV delay by the CRT, it will reduce it by 50 milliseconds. So that will be the programmed AV delay of the patient. So we can, one of the benefit of sync AV technology, sync AV algorithm, that we can actually, program this delta. So there is a range from 10 to 100. 10 to 100, we can actually program the delta. So by doing that, we can actually do many things. We can change the ECG, the QRS duration can be, adjusted, which is not there with other algorithms. I'll come to that later. So it's very easy. It's not very complex. So individualized programming, that is very, very important and benefit of sync AV. So in this slide, we can see normal biventricular pacing. If the QRS is around 142, then sync AV with delta of -50 biventricular pacing, thus the QRS can come down to around 131. So very important improvement. Now, at the same time, you can change it. You can modify the delta, and as per the response will also vary. Now, automatic measurement of the intrinsic conduction time, A sense or A paced. Now, every 256, it will determine what is the AV delay, and then you can actually decide the delta. Then optimal QRS can be found. Now, this is how it is done. Already Dr. Jadhav has shown this slide, so I'll probably skip those slides. Now, this is the thing, how it is done. Now, it's very important because as I already mentioned, the AV delay varies. Now, this is a diagram which is showing the normal biventricular pacing in a multi-point, LV lead. Now, what is the idea of this sync AV? It actually utilizes the intrinsic conduction through the right bundle, so that a fusion can be created. And you can see a fusion is being created with this technology. Now, many a time this SYNC-AV can use only LV only pacing. This is how it is doing. So RV is totally excluded, because we know chronic RV pacing many a time is not good. It is not beneficial for the patient. It can give rise to many multiple complications in the long run. So in this slide, a multi-point pacing, 2 point from LV side and 1 the natural intrinsic conduction is creating a very good fusion, and by that a very narrow QRS we can actually create. Now there are multiple trials which has evaluated this SYNC-AV, and it has found to be very, very effective. Now SYNC-AV, if we use it with multi-point pacing, which is another very important and advancement in the CRT technology, that actually can give rise to maximum benefit. And there are multiple trials which has evaluated this thing. Now, optimization of CRT continuous from initial consultation until last visit, very important. It's a lifelong matter. Just implantation is not sufficient. A proper programming in regular interval has shown in multiple trials to improve the outcome. SYNC-AV improves the QRS duration. QRS duration reduction correlates to CRT response in acute and long term. And if we combine SYNC-AV with multiple pacing, then we can actually have more options for more patients. Now, adaptive CRT, this is another algorithm from Medtronic. This also, based on the fact that chronic RV pacing is not good. So adaptive CRT similarly calculates the AV delay, and actually it utilizes the intrinsic conduction from the natural conducting site, and then it creates a fusion from the LV, left ventricular lead. But the problems, there is a very important limitation of adaptive CRT. Here the delta you cannot program. So in case of SYNC-AV, you can actually program different delta. Say for example, you can start from 10, then increase 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, up to 100. And you can actually see in the surface ECG how much QRS narrowing you are getting with different types of delta. But in adaptive CRT, this delta you cannot program. It is a fixed component which cannot change. So you have lesser role in adaptive CRT algorithm. Now, recent advancement improving CRT response, I think most of the things have been taken care by Dr. Jadhav. So nowadays we do have multi-point pacing. So quadripolar leads, there has been tremendous development in the lead design. So multi-point pacing we can have. So multi-point pacing, one of the important thing we must understand that multi-point pacing, it paces from 2 different locations in the LV. So it improves. There is no doubt that it improves the outcome of the patient. QRS duration becomes narrower, LV ejection fraction improve, cardiac output improve. At the same time, it utilizes more battery of the pulse generator. So whenever we are switching on multi-point pacing, we must understand that the battery consumption will be higher. So we might need to fill the battery earlier. So that is another thing. So in my practice, generally, I see how much response I get without switching it on the multi-point pacing. If the response is suboptimal, then only I go for multi-point pacing. Otherwise, I generally keep it off. So it might be very important in multi-point pacing, particularly in patients, particularly Shomo was mentioning in ischemic cardiomyopathy, there might be scar tissue. So if we have quadripolar lead, then we can actually have more, permutation and combination, more options, more vectors. So SYNC-AV CRT technology, I already discussed. I am not going to detail. So triple waveform fusion, this is something new. I just briefly discussed triple waveform. So basically, recent work has shown that selecting device setting that allows fusion with intrinsic conduction was associated best hemodynamic improvement by CRT. So here, multi-point pacing, multi-point quadripolar lead of the LV has some stimulation from 2 sides, 1 stimulation from the RV, and utilizing the natural conduction tissue. So triple waveform fusion, this is actually best thing to have, and with this technology we can actually we can actually convert many of the non-responder to a true responder. So this is how we perform the, this is the stepwise approach for CRT optimization. So we need to measure the RV-LV conduction time, check LV threshold, perform quick opt. Quick opt, I will not discuss. The perform sync AV CRT program multi-point pacing. This is the steps. So these are very, very easy step. Anybody can just follow the instruction. So, and they can actually, program it themselves. Now we can have, if we are using a multi-point pacing with quadrupolar lead, we can have multiple vectors. So 64 vectors we can get with multi-point pacing. So our option will be, increased. So this sync AV will allow intrinsic conduction. So AV delay program longer than their intrinsic conduction. That is how it works. Perform sync AV. I think I should in this place. Already this portion has been covered. So yeah, this is the how the delta is being determined, a program. This is this is how it is done. Delta, we start from delta 40 to 60, and we can serially see the QRS surface QRS narrowing, and we have wide option of changing the delta. With that, we can actually get a very, very narrow QRS width. So this is how the stepwise approach of CRT optimization. Last portion, we should check the multi-point pacing, is it required or not. As I already mentioned, it will use for the battery. So I think this is it. I think I should stop at this point.
So
regarding the latency, one thing I want to tell about the latency, say LV spikes has been given, but the contraction start after some time, say 50 milliseconds, 60 milliseconds. So this latency should be minused. So this particularly happen when your lead is in, say, scar area or near the scar area. Then this will happen. And in that case, you have to have latency. So you have to pre-excite LV, say latency is 60 millisecond. You have to pre-excite another minus 60 millisecond, means before LV should be pre-excited 60 millisecond even before.
So two comments from my side. One is, whenever we are using basic models of CRT, still we don't have even quick opt or device side sync AV and adaptive pacing is there. Echo still has immense role in these patients.
Yes.
Simple model, and that is and the echo is not over by only seeing the outer wall VTI, which usually we see and come out. VTI is okay, it's better with this VV combination, you come out. So we need to see AV optimization as well. We need to see E and proper E and A waves with no truncation of A wave. And the second comment would be like how adaptive CRT, what are the salient features of difference in adaptive CRT and sync AV? What exactly is the difference? Can you tell?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, both are very, very modern algorithm, wonderful algorithm. Both of them are very, very effective, has been tested in multiple trials and found to be superior compared to eco-optimized CRT. But one very important difference, in adaptive CRT, you cannot change the delta. Delta is fixed, it is probably minus 70. So you cannot change the delta. So it will also, bit to bit measure the pace as well as intrinsic AV delay, and from there it will, give the delta extraction and get the AV timing, program AV delay. But problem is you cannot change, you cannot program the delta. You can actually program the delta. So as per different delta, you can actually see the surface ECG QRS width. So that is one of the very important difference in between sync AV and adaptive CRT.
Essentially, in principle, they belong to having the same kind of philosophy to keep the RV pacing less.
Yes, yes.
No, you see, Dilip, not only the RV pacing is less, I will say adaptive CRT is even better than sync CRT. Although I'm not promoting one company over the other, because it see the your QRS duration. And if the QRS duration, they measure the far field QRS duration, and if the QRS duration is more, they will further pre-excite the LV so much so that the QRS duration narrow. So not only the AB interval optimization, they optimize the VB interval as well every minute. And even during the minute it tested intrinsic conduction, that time also the V sense response is giving the biventricular pacing in that bit also. Whereas in 256 bit later, 3 beats, the AB interval is checked by the SynC AV CRT in St. Jude's company. There all the 3 bits after 256 bits is not by V. They are intrinsic conduction, and then they make the average and then do the minus delta, whatever value you keep, and that minus. So that is okay for the AB optimization. But VB optimization, depending on the QRS duration, I think the algorithm is even superior in adaptive CRT. Although there is no trial has been compared between the two, let me tell you about the adaptive CRT trial. In that trial, they compared with the eco-guided versus adaptive CRT, and what they found, both are equivalent. And because of both are equivalent, and because of RV is less spaced, the atrial fibrillation incidence is reduced by 46%, even by V adaptive or LV adaptive pacing only. So in that trial also, so do not disregard the echo, because the adaptive trial was tested against echo and found to be gold standard. It was equally effective. I have those slides beyond, but I didn't told because of lack of time, but I had those slides downwards.
Sir, one more confusion is there, like how much effective the ventricular sense response algorithm in tackling VPCs, ventricular premature complexes. So
Yes.
do you feel that partial or in control VPCs can be tackled by these ventricular sense response algorithms, or how VSR?
No, ventricular sense response is a response that all beat, even intrinsic beat sensed, gives biventricular pacemaker. Okay, so it's not that the intrinsic sense is dysynchronous. So what I mean to say, whichever beat is coming in either atrial fibrillation or during the sensing period, one sensing period, that beat is also biventricular. So at least is definitely not effect like atrial fibrillation. I will not say, but you, since intermittent atrial fibrillation, even on drugs, you can keep this VSR on. It will at least give you maximum CRT pacing, by V pacing, but it's not that effective like complete AV block and then biventricular.
So we have Sunandan and Dr. Sanjeev Kachuria. I can may I have some comments from them? Soumya, you have some comments, Soumya?
Both the speakers, they have discussed the topic very nicely. Just a few things to add, that one of the things in CRT, you have to put the lead in accurate position. That is most important, and then we look for that echo criteria or the ECG criteria. And Arindam already discussed that ECG narrowest QRS complex and the fusion bit. This is the most important, because echo sometimes the AV delay and the VV delay by LVOT, VTI and all, there is some discordance in about 30 to 40% patient. If you have a maximum LVOT, VTI, then you will get a great AV delay, and that will cause a diastolic MR, and there will be discordance. So that this type of automatic device-based device-based optimization they came and they also tested, and they found that there is non-inferiority in echo criteria with the device-based optimization and the SynC AP adaptive CRT criteria and all, and then the trial also proved that. That is why these ECG, these echo criteria, that didn't come in the guidelines, in the latest guideline of the ESC also. But those patients who have a delayed responder or non-responder, these kind of patient, we need both the VV delay and AV delay should be determined. Not only LVOT, VTI will help, because this, if there is diastolic MR, patient will not improve and all. And so that already Dr. Jadhav discussed, and Arindam also nicely explained that this kind of device-based CRT modulation should be done. Then if the patient is not improving, then multi-site pacing, or as Arindam told, or the eco-waste criteria we can fit in.
Great. Sanjeev, Dr. Kuzulia, you were telling something.
Yeah, I was talking about what is the CRT when you're putting a CRT. Are the algorithms for PMT response all are same as are there for the pacemaker? Are the same the PMT response and are they switched
Yeah,
on
there
or
is
the
dynamic,
response?
yeah, there is dynamic PVR. Dr. Yadav and Dr. In. Okay.
Please, can you repeat, Sanjeev, your question?
So my question is whether the PMT response which is there in pacemakers is it switched on in the CRT in the same manner and it behaves in the same manner
No,
as a
in that you see in CRT you need tracking rate higher, so you do the PVRP shorter, so the chances, because you need higher tracking rate, because you need 30 140 tracking rate. So if you will make the PVRP shorter, only then you will get it, apart from AV interval shortening. Okay, so if you shorten too much to get maximum heart rate tracking more 140 50, then 150, then the chances of PMT is also higher, particularly if there is VPCs.
So I think the response of the PMT response which is there in pacemakers is activated in the CRT also. See, there is one basic difference. If you are talking about the CRT,
Yes.
CRT are pacemakers which work on triggered mode. This is one of the places where you work on triggered mode to make sure that you want to have a biventricular pacing. And as you said that you want the PVAP to decrease, so you'll always be in more chances of having a PMT in this case.
Yes, so that's why if you
control
have,
that
but
PVAP
we
is
have to keep,
Yeah.
you see, what we do, we keep the PVRP shorter, and so that tracking rate increases, but we keep PMT on so that PVRP increases if PMT occurs.
yeah, means the response which is there in pacemakers also, the 8th beat you will have a PVAP which increases. Or you have one of the atrial which is not sensed.
Automatic PVRP,
Or one of the atrial beats not.
automatic PVRP, so that it increases if PMT occurs.
Boss, one clarification here. Once we are allowing, the V to track from A, there is an algorithm called negative AV hysteresis. So, which is work there. AV hysteresis.
Like
And
CKD is the same, negative hysteresis.
we don't want, this PMT to also happen here, but still it can happen. And maybe, after, high atrial rates, this can be a phenomenon. Oh, sorry, there is a VA conduction. This can be a phenomenon in CRT as well.
If say
It's not
that
which is
an atrial detected, then PVRP will increase.
Okay.
So the automatic PVRP extension with the detection of PMT, these programs should be made on also in patient with BIV, so that this should be taken care of.
So we are confusing between normal, negative AV hysteresis with PVAR. So these are all two different things. Sanjeev boss, I think.
Yeah. They're absolutely different things. There's no confusion. The PVARP is what the PVARP we are talking about is like the PVARP of any pacemaker. Now, negative hysteresis is a phenomena which you're talking about decreasing the AV delay. So it will again add up to the same thing because both of them are phenomena helping to prevent PMT. But they're not to be confused. There are different, altogether different way of tackling the thing. PVARP increase is intrinsic to any PMT response, whether it's on the pacemaker or the CRT.
Yeah.
What you're talking about a negative hysteresis is something which is intrinsic to the sync AV type.
Or
Where
CRT,
they detect delay, yeah. We want to make sure that the AV delay becomes less, which is one of the ways of decreasing your PMT. It is either you increase the PVARP or decrease your sense AV delay. That's one of the methods. But yes, they're not to be confused. They're absolutely different things. And a dynamic PVARP is now almost present in all the devices, just as to help the PMT. It's almost present. But you see, if you have a dynamic
PVRP made auto, so that it automatically increase if they will detect something. Another thing, if the scar area is much more in patient with ischemic heart disease, definitely the benefit is not that great, whatever you do. So if the scar
Yeah, so
area,
that is why
your lead is in the scar, so better nowadays there is a fusion called MRI is fused with the your what is called during is fluoro, and you now MR and fluoro is fused. Scar you know where in the MR, and that is fused. Then you put the lead beyond that to choose a vein where the scar is not there. So these fusion techniques
so
and
that
others
is
to increase the response rate in patient with ischemic heart disease with large scar.
so to start with, that is why the reason is that CRT per se is very good response in DCMP, but because the scars are less. But then once again, the best way to go about once you have an ischemic cardiomyopathy and planning a CRT is to have an MRI done so that you have your scar area identified. But that doesn't deter you from doing a CRT, because what you can do is that you will be knowing that this is a scar area, the latency is going to be more. But yes, if you are able to understand the scar area, well, let's say the scar area is in the posterolateral region of itself only, the whole, then you'll have to identify where it is less. But because you can't just go about putting it in the middle cardiac vein then only because you have a posterolateral vein which is scarred. The maximum response is going to come from there. But yes, contrary to a DCMP, while doing a CRT in an ischemic cardiomyopathy, it's absolute essential to get an MRI. Make sure you have a scar area so you are more wiser on your table to understand that. Let's say you're chasing a vein and you made your best effort to chase a vein, and then it was in the scarred area. So you see, your vision on the table becomes better.
Sanjeev, but sometimes it's not, it's limited by the venous tributary. If you have a scar and venous tributary is there and other place venous tributary is not there, then you are not going to get the benefit. So in that case, I will prefer multi-point pacing with so that, or we will use from pacing spikes to that is the latency period minus.
Yeah.
So I think
the best way for that is, the only last thing about it is, if you have a posterolateral vein which is scarred, the area is scarred, then the approach from the middle cardiac vein, because all of these veins are intrinsically connected. So if you have an area in the posterolateral vein, you have a brilliant vein, but that area is totally scarred. Your medial cardiac vein, even if you enter it, you'll find in some of the cases the middle cardiac vein does connect to the posterolateral by a tributary itself. So you'll be wiser on the table to understand that though you have a better posterolateral vein, it'll be better to go from the middle cardiac vein and reach to a midpoint of the scar is left. So the usefulness of MRI is to be wiser on the table. In the end, what Dr. Yadav is saying is the best thing, that you have to get to the posterolateral. You want to get to the posterolateral vein, maybe you can do some moderate changes in your latency period and go along with it. That's why the response in ischemic is always a question mark as compared to a dilated cardiomyopathy.
I'm doing MRI in dilated cardiomyopathy to avoid ICD. If there is no scar, I don't put ICD anymore in DCM. I put only BIV.
How much is the cutoff you take?
Because
10% or more, or 15%?
The trial has shown 15% or more, 13%. Some trial has shown 13% and more is the scar area. The sudden death risk is higher. So, what I do is any scar in DCM, I will put ICD. If no scar, no ICD. Only by VT.
I think that you're talking about is the late gadolinium enhancement, where 15%.
Until unless they have documented VT or NSVT in Holter.
But I think the basic reason for that is very simple. In CRT, once you try to put a CRTP, you're expected the LV remodeling to occur, and you're expected that if there's no scar, you're expected to get a good response per se and get the ejection fraction per se. You're expected to have a good ejection fraction improvement. So I think going straight away for a CRTD in a DCMP is always questionable unless you are able to document you have a documented VT, or you're able to document a scar, which Dr. Yadav is very correctly pointing.
So thank you so much.
Paul has asked a question whether you will put DCM patient, whether you will put CRT-P or CRT-D. As I told you, I will do MRI. If there is no scar, only CRT-P. If scar, CRT-D.
We are also doing, sir. We are also going for MRI.
At least you will save another 4 lakhs to the patient.
I think.
Thank you so much.
I think Dilip, Danish trial answered this question very well. Danish trial was a non-ischemic cardiomyopathy. That's where they said CRTP is better than D, where the D actually didn't score. Is this only?
Yeah.
While the D scored in SCD-HEP trial, when you're talking about just an ICD. Whether the QRS is narrowed or not is not the issue in that case. In this case, yeah,
overwhelming for CRTD in ischemic, non-ischemic cardiomyopathy. With
Yeah.
addition to Danish, we are still,
yeah,
in place
it's still
where
a
we
gray
can-
zone. Yes, yes, it's a gray zone. You can just get the MRI done as you are doing in all your cases. And that's the right answer.
So thank you so much. I think we are at the end of this important educative session by Dr. R.D. Yadav and Arindam, and great job by Dr. Soumya Patro and Dr. P.K. Hajra, and nice comments from Dr. Sanjeev Katuria and everyone. Thank
I
you so
didn't
much.
find anything from Hajra, sir.
He has left. He has another seminar. I think. Usually
Okay.
3 in a day. Yeah.
Okay, Dilip, thank you.
Thank you. Very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night all.
Okay, I'm ready for future meeting also. Don't worry.
You have moderate this session, 9th session, last session.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear. Good night. Have a safe life.